My dad let out a short laugh, lifting his wine glass like he was making a toast at my expense. "Your sister earned everything herself," he said. "Eyes forward, focused, not distracted like you." The entire table went still. My mom's hand froze halfway to the serving bowl, the spoon hovering as if afraid to make a sound. I leaned back in my chair, something sharp and heavy settling somewhere deep in my chest, and said quietly, "Then I'll stop sending you money." The color drained from his face so fast it was almost painful to watch. "What money?" he asked, genuinely puzzled. And in that moment, the house finally let the truth pull up its roots. Secrets that had been sleeping for years woke up all at once. That was the night I stopped being the quiet daughter. But before I explain how everything cracked open after that, tell me where you're listening from, because I need to know I'm not the only one who's had to draw a line to protect their own sanity. From the outside, we were the sort of family other people envied. Sunday dinners that looked perfect in photos, framed smiles from vacations we could barely afford, matching sweaters on Christmas cards that made everyone think we lived in harmony. But perfection is easier to print than it is to maintain. My name's Rachel Shortridge. I'm 32. The soft-spoken daughter, the one who learned early that peace sometimes meant biting your tongue until you tasted blood. My sister Helena, 2 years older, was the favorite child. She was the shiny one. Teachers adored her, neighbors bragged about her, and my parents practically worshipped her achievements like they were family heirlooms. My dad, Frank, ran our house with the same iron-handed pride he used in his old restaurant. Everything had to pass through him, opinions included. Mom, sweet and exhausted, spent years translating his rough edges into apologies he would never say out loud. When the recession hit and their mortgage slipped behind, I was barely stable myself, working at an architecture firm, trying to pretend I knew what adulthood was. But I told Mom I'd help until they got back on their feet. $5,000 a month. Quietly. Consistently. Dad refused to use online banking. Screens made him suspicious, so I sent the money to Helena's account. She promised she'd hand it over in cash or by check. "It's easier this way," she said. And because she was Helena, and because trusting her was what we'd all been conditioned to do, I believed her. The transfers became routine, as predictable as breathing. Each month I sent the money, and each month I waited for a thank you that never came. When Dad casually mentioned that the mortgage was finally under control, I felt something warm bloom in my chest, thinking I'd made a difference. Helena would text the word, "handled." And that was that. Still, the numbers never lined up in my head. I tried to ignore it. The last time I visited, the house looked more neglected than ever. Paint peeling, lights flickering, the fridge making the kind of sound that meant it was dying slowly. Mom smiled the way she always did, stretching her face over worry. "She's helping us manage things," she said. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. That evening, while Dad turned up the TV and Helena tapped through her phone, I sat at the dining table staring at the framed family photo above the fireplace. 4 smiling faces, 1 missing truth. If I'd stared a little harder, maybe I had seen the cracks forming. Dinner that night was choreographed politeness. The good plates came out even though it wasn't a holiday. Mom's rosemary chicken filled the room, the smell bringing back memories of childhood before silence grew sharp edges. Dad poured more wine, then looked toward Helena with the approval he'd never once turned on me. "Your sister's really got it figured out," he said proudly. "Ambition, drive, knows what she wants." He looked at me while saying it, but the pride wasn't meant for me. It landed like a splinter. Familiar. Small. But deep. "I'm happy for her," I replied automatically, the same way I'd responded to every compliment she'd collected over the years. Mom nodded, reaching for the potatoes. I noticed her hand shaking. Dad chuckled. "All on her own, too. No handouts." The room shifted. The sound of his glass touching the table rang louder than it should have. I could have stayed quiet, smiled like always, pretended the comment didn't dig right into the one thing I'd never said out loud. But I didn't. I leaned back and heard my own voice come out steady and cold. Then I'll stop sending you money. The world seemed to freeze on contact. Even the refrigerator's low hum seemed to hold its breath. Mom's spoon hovered in midair. Helena's fork scraped against her plate. Dad stared at me, blinking slowly as if someone had spoken in a language he didn't understand. What money? His tone wasn't angry. It was earnest, truly confused. And that was the part that cracked something inside me. The $5,000 I've been wiring to Helena every month for you and Mom since last April. He blinked twice. You've been what? Mom's face drained as she turned to Helena. Helena straightened, shoulders tightening. She's exaggerating. There were delays. Sometimes she sent it late. Every month, I cut in. The first of each month. I have all the confirmations. The silence that followed wasn't soft. It was sharp. A blade. Dad turned slowly to Helena. We never saw a cent. Helena's jaw clenched. You don't understand. There were expenses, investments. What kind of investment eats $60,000 and doesn't leave you with a receipt? I asked. Her eyes flashed with something ugly. You wouldn't understand, Rachel. You never support anything unless it's safe. Believing in family shouldn't require a risk assessment. Mom's voice cracked. Helena, is it true? Helena looked away, eyes narrowing. It's complicated. The steam from the food had faded. The night had gone cold. I pushed my chair back and stood. Then it's her problem now. Dad gripped the table, knuckles white. His eyes flicked to Helena again, but she didn't look up. And in that small moment, barely a breath long, I understood that nothing in this house would ever return to what it had been. That night, sleep avoided all of us. The walls felt awake, listening, waiting. I lay in my old childhood room, staring at the faded glow-in-the-dark stars stuck to the ceiling. Down the hall, voices rose and fell. Mom's soft sobs, Dad pacing, Helena's room silent. I turned on my lamp and opened my laptop out of habit. Payment records, transfer logs, bank statements. The numbers stared back at me like evidence in a crime scene. $60,000. My money. My trust. Gone. The next morning, Dad was at the kitchen table, head in his hands. Mom stood by the window, her robe loose, coffee untouched. She says it's tied up in some company, she whispered. A company doesn't pay your bills. It drains what's left of your trust, I said. Dad clenched his jaw. We'll talk to her when she wakes. But Helena didn't wake. She was gone, her car missing, her room stripped except for a faint trail of perfume and a sticky note on her dresser. Don't overreact. I'll fix it. I stared at the words until they blurred. She's not fixing anything, I said. She's escaping. Mom broke down again. Dad grabbed his coat, muttering that he was going after her. I stopped him. Not without proof. Let me handle this. He hesitated, but then nodded. That day, I treated the situation like an architectural plan. I followed structure. Logs, timelines, transfers, patterns. Every weakness where the money shifted. Evan came over as the sky darkened. My laptop glowed between us. You're digging deep, he said softly. I have to, I answered. This isn't about the money anymore. It's about how easily she lied. He nodded. So where do you go next? The bank, then a lawyer. At the bank, the manager frowned as she scrolled. These funds were redirected, she said, pointing at the screen. Transferred out again. Looks like they went to a separate intermediary. To who? I asked. She hesitated. A man named Mason Vale. Something in me clicked into place. A name. A thread. Finally, something solid to pull on. When I stepped out of the bank, the January wind hit me like a promise. I pulled my coat tight and murmured, Fine, Helena. You played with trust. Let's see what the truth costs you. 3 days later, just after sunrise, the doorbell rang. Mom and I were in the kitchen, both worn out and hollow. Dad was upstairs, digging through files, trying to understand the pieces of a life he thought he controlled. When I opened the door, a man stood on the porch, a practiced smile, jeans, hoodie, too casual for someone holding a family hostage with lies. "Morning," he said. "I'm Rachel. I'm Mason." His name fell like a stone. "Helena's Mason?" I asked. He smirked. "I guess you could say that." Dad appeared behind me, voice low and dark. "What are you doing here?" Mason held up a folder like he was offering a peace treaty. "Just clearing up a misunderstanding. Helena asked me to bring these. Proof of our investment." Mom stepped forward, pale. "Investment?" Mason nodded confidently. "Startup work. A new app, connecting artisans to clients. Scalable. Disruptive, you know." I stepped aside. "Show us." He spread out glossy mock-ups, fake charts, buzzwords that meant nothing. Phase 1 this, beta launch that. Not a single figure matched reality. Dad flipped through the pages, his face hardening with each sheet. "This is garbage," he said. Mason's smile flickered. "Every big idea starts small." $60,000 small? I said sharply. He looked at me, calm slipping. "You've talked to Helena." "No," I said. "I talked to the bank." The air in the room shifted instantly. Mom clutched the back of a chair. Dad's breath grew uneven, and the truth, finally, was forcing its way into the light. Mason leaned on the counter casual again, but his eyes were sharp. "You don't understand. She wanted this. She believed in me." "And you let her believe," I said, "because it paid your rent." Before he could answer, the sound of tires crunching on gravel filled the silence. I turned to the window. Helena's white sedan pulled into the driveway. She stepped out, sunglasses on, though the sky was gray. The door opened, and there she was. Hair perfect. Coat, too. Expensive. Smile practiced. When she saw Mason, her expression cracked. "What are you doing here?" Mason's voice softened instantly. "Babe, I told you I'd fix it." Her jaw tightened. "You weren't supposed to come here." Dad's voice was quiet but deadly. "You took your sister's money. You lied to us." Helena's eyes flicked between us. "It's not what you think." "Then explain it," I said. "Because 60,000 disappeared, the mortgage fell behind, and somehow he's driving a new car." She looked at Mason. "You said we'd double it in a year." His shrug was careless. "Plans change." "Plans?" Dad's fist hit the table so hard the glasses rattled. "You stole from your own family." Helena flinched, but still clung to the illusion. "It's not stealing if it's an investment. We just needed time." Mom's voice broke. "We skipped our payments because we trusted you." The silence afterwards was the kind that swallows sound. I took a step closer to Mason. "So, what's your real job?" He smirked. "I'm an entrepreneur." "Funny," I said. "Your last business owes back child support." His face twitched. Helena turned to me, shocked. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the messages. "The woman with the toddler who'd knocked on our door yesterday. She's been looking for you, Mason." "For him." Helena's hand went to her mouth. "You lied to me." He sighed like a man tired of drama. "I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything." "That's the same thing," I said. Dad moved around a table, standing toe to toe with him. "You're leaving this house now." Mason's smile vanished completely. "You can't stop her from seeing me. She's an adult." Helena's voice was shaking. "I'm not going anywhere with you." He reached for her arm, and instinct kicked in. I stepped between them. "Don't touch her." The sound of sirens grew louder outside. Mason froze, eyes narrowing. "What did you do?" "Just returning the favor," I said. "I called the police an hour ago. They're very interested in where the money went." He backed toward the door as flashing lights painted the walls red and blue. 2 officers entered. "Mason Vale?" one asked. Mason tried to laugh. "This is a mistake." But his voice broke when they cuffed him. Helena sank into a chair, her entire body shaking. Dad leaned against the counter, pale and silent. Mom cried into her hands. As they led Mason away, he'd turned to me, his voice a whisper meant to cut. "You think you've won. There's always another version of me out there." I met his eyes. "Then I hope she finds someone like me too." The door shut behind him. The house exhaled for the first time in months. 2 weeks later, the police called. They'd found evidence of multiple scams. 5 women, same story, same promises. Mason had pleaded guilty. The prosecutor wanted Helena's testimony to strengthen the case. At first, she refused. "I can't face him again." She whispered. "You already did," I told her, "and you survived it." In court, Helena sat beside me. She spoke softly but clearly, describing how Mason convinced her to invest, how he'd used my transfers as seed money. Her hand shook, but her voice held steady. When Mason tried to look at her, she didn't look back. When the verdict was read, 3 years in prison, 18 months without parole, the room went still. No applause, no celebration, just relief. Dad's hand found mine under the table. Mom sobbed quietly beside him. Helena let out a breath that sounded like surrender. As the bailiff led Mason away, his last glance was met with nothing. We walked out of that courthouse into cold, bright daylight. For the first time, it didn't sting. It felt clean. Later that night, back home, I stood in the backyard holding a small box. Photos, old receipts, a few notes he'd written. Helena, she stood next to me, lighter in the shoulders than I'd ever seen her. "Are you sure you want to do this?" I asked. She nodded. "It doesn't mean anything now." I struck the match. The flames caught, curling through the paper, turning everything he'd touched into smoke. We watched it rise into the January sky, until nothing was left but ash. Helena whispered, "He took so much from me." I looked at her, then, "Make sure he never gets another inch." By spring, she'd found a small job at an office downtown. Mom tended her garden again. Dad fixed the railing on the porch he'd ignored for years. The silence that used to hurt now felt almost gentle. One afternoon, Helena came to me with a small envelope. Inside was a photo of us as kids at the county fair, missing teeth, sticky fingers, laughing like we didn't know what betrayal meant. On the back, she'd written, "Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I deserved it." I didn't say anything, I just hugged her. For once, the house didn't need words to stay standing. The weeks after the trial felt strange, like the air inside the house had been rewired. Mom started leaving the curtains open again, sunlight spilling across the kitchen tiles. Dad took long walks in the morning, no longer carrying that tightness in his shoulders. And Helena, she didn't try to perform anymore. No perfect hair, no expensive perfume, no excuses. Just her, quieter, humbler, still finding her footing. She found work as an office assistant downtown. It wasn't glamorous, but she said it felt honest. Every evening she came home with a packed lunchbox and new lines on her hands, the kind that came from effort instead of guilt. Sometimes I'd catch her sitting in the garden with Mom, planting herbs, the same rosemary Mom once used to season the chicken that started everything. One night, Dad sat beside me at the table while I went through some bills. "I think we made her this way," he said softly. "We kept calling her special until she thought she couldn't fail." I looked at him. "We all played our part, but we're fixing it now." He nodded, exhaling. "I'm proud of you, Rachel." It hit harder than I expected, maybe because it was the first time he'd said it without comparing me to anyone else. Later, Helena joined us carrying 3 mugs of tea. "We'll be okay," she said, half to herself, half to us. For the first time in years, I believed her. The house was finally quiet, but not the kind of quiet that hides pain. This was a different silence, the kind built on truth. A month later, I packed my suitcase for Seattle. A new job, a new start. The morning light pulled through the kitchen windows as Mom folded laundry and Dad read the paper like old times. Helena walked me to the car, her sweatshirt sleeves pushed up, a faint smile on her face. "You're really leaving," she said. "It's time," I answered. She slipped an envelope into my hand. A photo of us as kids holding cotton candy, cheeks sticky with sugar. On the back she'd written, "Sometimes you have to lose everything to see what's worth keeping." As I drove away, I looked once in the rearview mirror. The house looked smaller, but lighter somehow. Family doesn't break you unless you let it.